Thank you, Mr. Robertson. That was a wonderful report about our nation's founding father, George Washington. Thank you very much. Let's see, who do we have next? Oh, Mr. Dunlap. And what will your report be on today, Mr. Dunlap?
Well, Mr. Polk, my report will be on the story of Juneteenth. Mr. Polk,
Is this a joke to you, Mr. Dunlap?
No. It's not a joke, Mr. Polk. This is my assignment.
Mr. Dunlap, your assignment was to do a report on a historical figure or event, not to analyze an episode of Blackish.
Whoa. It's not an episode of Blackish. Juneteenth is a holiday that celebrates freedom from slavery. It was a big event that happened in 1865.
Well, if it's such a major historical event, how come I've never heard of it?
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Polk, you're the history teacher, so why don't you tell me? Why haven't you heard of it?
Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Dunlap, this better be a good report. Or else you're not just going to fail this class. You're going to get detention for that snarky little comment you just made.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the story of Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a holiday that comes around every June 19th and celebrates freedom from slavery. On that day, in 1865, Union General Gordon Granger and thousands of other Union troops came to Galveston Bay, Texas with General Order Number 3, which basically said that the hundreds of thousands of Africans that were enslaved in the area were now free. And just think, 2 years earlier, the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. And 2 months before this, General Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse, ending the Civil War. Now, the reason Granger had to come down and even do this was because even though the Emancipation Proclamation had already been issued and telegraphed to all the states, some people just wasn't listening. Now, a lot of people think of Juneteenth as the day in which slavery ended, but that's not completely true. There was still slavery in Delaware and Kentucky, and that lasted until December 18th of that year, when the 13th Amendment was ratified. Nevertheless, June 19th was still a significant day because Texas was the last state of the Confederacy that still had slaves. The first Juneteenth celebration was held on June 19, 1866, in Galveston, Texas, and would not be the last. Back then, it wasn't called Juneteenth, they called it Jubilee Day. It didn't start becoming known as Juneteenth until the 1890s. These celebrations became a big staple for blacks in Texas. In fact, in 1872, black leaders in Texas raised over $1,000 to purchase 10 acres of land to celebrate Juneteenth. And those 10 acres of land are now at Houston's Emancipation Park. And, as you can imagine, these celebrations are pretty lit. You know, they praise God, they play games, they ate, typical cookout stuff. But, like most black celebrations, at some point, racism came into play and slowed down. Segregation barred African Americans from using public parks to host Juneteenth celebrations. That, plus factors like economic downturn in the 1930s, and the fact that many African Americans did not want to be reminded of the slave past, led to a decline in Juneteenth celebrations going into the 20th century. But despite all that, the spirit of Juneteenth still lingered on, and eventually the celebrations returned. In 1979, thanks to the work of Representative Al Edwards, Juneteenth became a state holiday in Texas. Over time, Juneteenth began to be recognized beyond just Texas and be celebrated all across the United States. Most states in this nation have already recognized Juneteenth in some way. And yet, despite this, Juneteenth is still not a federal holiday like the 4th of July. Well, at least not yet.